Picture this. It's a warm summer night in pre-colonial North America. No screens, no bug spray, no air conditioning, just you, the open air, and several million mosquitoes that want you dead. For most of us, that's a camping nightmare that ends with us sleeping in the car. But for Native Americans, that was just Tuesday night. For centuries, indigenous peoples across North America figured out how to sleep peacefully in conditions that would send modern humans into a screaming panic. And what's remarkable is that their solutions were so effective, so scientifically sound, that we're only now beginning to understand the genius behind them. This is the story of humanity's oldest war against the world's deadliest animal, and how one side won without ever inventing a single can of DEET. Before we dive into the solutions, we need to understand just how bad this problem actually was. Mosquitoes weren't just everywhere in pre-colonial America, they were dominant. Swamps, forests, plains, coastlines, every ecosystem had its own varieties, and every variety wanted blood. The oldest trick in the book turned out to be one of the most effective: smoke. But this wasn't your standard campfire. What Native Americans developed were sophisticated smoke delivery systems that modern pest control would actually recognize as legitimate technology. The Ojibwe called them smudges. They'd gather damp leaves, wet grass, and green sticks, then arrange them to produce not flames, but thick, persistent smoke. The goal was maximum output with minimum visibility, a smokescreen that repelled insects without choking humans. And they didn't just build one fire. They strategically positioned multiple smudge fires around sleeping areas, creating overlapping zones of protection. It was defensive architecture made from smoke. The Menominee tribe discovered this technique almost by accident. During wild rice harvests, they'd build massive fires to dry grain. They noticed that on these smoky nights, mosquito bites dropped to almost zero. What started as food processing became dual-purpose pest control. But here's where the real expertise showed: plant selection. This wasn't random vegetation. Experienced tribal members knew exactly which plants produced the most mosquito-repelling compounds. Cedar bark released oils that insects despised. Certain grasses confused mosquito sensors. Sage didn't just smell good to humans, it smelled like chemical warfare to bugs. The engineering was remarkable too. These fires were designed to burn for 6 to 8 hours without maintenance. People could sleep through the entire night without anyone needing to tend the flames. Some tribes even developed portable versions. Smudge pots made from hollowed gourds or clay bowls that could be carried to new campsites. Instant mosquito protection anywhere. But what if you didn't have dry wood? What if the wind kept blowing your smoke in the wrong direction? Native Americans had backup plans, and one of the most ingenious was literally under their feet. Mud became living armor. The logic was simple but brilliant. Mosquitoes need to pierce skin with needle-like mouths. Cover that skin with dried mud, and suddenly their job becomes nearly impossible. It's like trying to bite through leather. Some tribes turned this into an art form. They'd collect clay-rich soil from riverbanks, mix it to the perfect consistency, then apply it to all exposed skin before bed. A family could coat themselves in minutes. But mud wasn't just a physical barrier, it was also air conditioning. As the water evaporated, it cooled the skin underneath. During sweltering summer nights, this created a double benefit. You stayed cool and bite-free. The mud dried into a tough, flexible shell that moved with the body. Unlike modern bug spray that sweats off, this natural armor stayed put all night. Mosquitoes would land, probe around with their sensors, then give up and fly away frustrated. Not all mud was equal, though. River clay was premium because it contained minerals that made it stick better and last longer. Swamp mud worked, but smelled terrible. Coastal tribes used sandy clay mixtures that dried faster but needed thicker application. Morning cleanup became a ritual. People would wade into lakes at sunrise, scrubbing away the night's protective coating. Kids probably loved this part, rolling in mud with parental permission, then splashing around afterward. The genius was in the accessibility. Mud was everywhere, completely free, and required zero preparation. Just scoop and apply. Now we arrive at what might be the most effective method, and definitely the most disgusting. Gulf Coast tribes developed another approach: rancid animal fat. We're talking spoiled alligator grease, fermented fish oils, and other delightfully putrid animal fats that would make a modern person physically ill. But mosquitoes, they absolutely hated it. Spanish conquistadors wrote about entire families glistening like seals before bedtime, coated head to toe in this greasy substance. One reported that Native American children were so thoroughly slathered you couldn't see their actual skin. Why did this work? Mosquitoes rely heavily on smell to find victims. They track carbon dioxide, body heat, and specific skin scents. When you coat yourself in rancid animal fat, you're wearing an olfactory disguise. The mosquitoes literally cannot detect human smell through all that grease. The process was unpleasant. Families would heat chunks of old alligator fat or fish oil until it melted into spreadable paste. Then everyone took turns coating each other, making sure to cover arms, legs, faces, necks, everything.
The smell was so strong that European traders claimed they could detect Native American camps from miles away.
But here's the thing. Modern scientists have actually tested this. Rancid animal fats provide genuine, measurable protection against mosquitoes. It doesn't last as long as DEET, but it works for several hours, perfect for sleeping through the night. Different regions used whatever animals were available. Coastal groups used fish oils and seal fat. Inland tribes used bear grease or rendered deer fat. The key was letting it go rancid. Fresh fat didn't work nearly as well. Something about the breakdown of oils created compounds mosquitoes found particularly offensive. By age 5 or 6, children could apply their own protective coating. This wasn't occasional use. This was nightly routine for months out of the year. While mud, smoke, and grease provided personal protection, Native Americans understood something deeper. Nature fights itself. Instead of battling every mosquito individually, many tribes recruited armies of natural predators. Dragonflies were the MVPs. These aerial hunters can devour hundreds of mosquitoes daily. Some tribes deliberately planted flowering plants near camps to attract more dragonflies. The flowers drew the dragonflies. The dragonflies patrolled the area like tiny fighter jets. Bats joined the night shift. A single bat can consume over 1,000 mosquitoes per hour. Native Americans avoided disturbing bat roosts near sleeping areas, understanding these mammals provided better nighttime security than any human could manage.
Birds handled daytime patrol.
purple martins, swallows, and other insect eaters received protection from tribes who understood their value. But here's where the ecological wisdom really shows. Many tribes actively managed wetlands to maintain the balance that kept mosquito populations under control. They understood that draining all standing water would eliminate mosquito breeding grounds, but it would also destroy the habitats where dragonfly larvae developed and where birds found food. This required serious environmental knowledge passed through generations. Elders taught which ponds to preserve, which areas attracted beneficial predators, and how human activities could tip the scales toward more mosquitoes. They learned that healthy, diverse ecosystems naturally regulated pest insects without constant human intervention. This was the opposite of European settler approaches, which relied on brute force. Drain everything, kill anything that moves. Native Americans enhanced existing natural systems rather than replacing them. Plants became the final weapon in the anti-mosquito arsenal. And these weren't random selections. Tribes spent generations testing which species actually worked. Sweetgrass became the MVP across many regions. When burned slowly near sleeping areas, its smoke created an invisible barrier mosquitoes refused to cross. The Lakota would braid long sweetgrass strips, then light one end like natural incense. One braid could smolder for hours. Sage worked differently, but just as effectively. Dried sage bundles were rubbed directly on skin, leaving behind oils that confused mosquito antennae. The insect literally couldn't locate warm-blooded targets. Cedar was used multiple ways. Cedar boughs were woven into bed frames. Cedar bark was stripped and woven into blankets. The oils in cedar contain compounds that mosquitoes find genuinely offensive. Different regions developed completely different botanical arsenals. Plains tribes used prairie sage and buffalo grass. Forest dwellers used pine needles, birch bark, and wild mint. Coastal groups discovered certain beach grasses and salt marsh plants worked wonders when dried and burned. The Ojibwe created complex herbal washes by boiling multiple plants together, wild bergamot, yarrow, cattail roots, into concentrated teas. They'd splash the cooled liquid on skin before bed. These plant cocktails didn't just repel mosquitoes, they often soothed existing bites and prevented infection. Many tribes made their actual beds from insect-repelling plants. Instead of bare ground, they'd create thick mats from aromatic grasses, fern fronds, or pine boughs. Sleeping directly on natural repellents meant all-night protection. The most sophisticated groups developed seasonal calendars, knowing when different species were most potent. Spring plants had different chemical profiles than fall harvests. This was botanical science passed down through generations. What's remarkable is that modern research keeps proving these choices were scientifically sound. The essential oils these tribes relied on actually do disrupt mosquito behavior in measurable ways. Beyond smoke, mud, fat, and plants, Native Americans developed an entire strategic framework for mosquito avoidance. Clothing became nighttime armor. Long sleeves, pants, and wraparound blankets blocked mosquito proboscises. Thick leather or tightly woven fabric created barriers insects couldn't penetrate. Some tribes pulled clothing tight around wrists and ankles, created sealed barriers. Shelter placement mattered enormously. Sleeping areas were positioned to catch evening breezes that scattered mosquito swarms. Wind became an invisible ally. A simple lean-to, angled just right, could redirect airflow and make mosquitoes work much harder to reach sleeping people. Elevation offered escape.
Raised sleeping platforms, even just a few feet off the ground, moved people above the densest mosquito zones. Ground-level air stays thick with insects, but climb higher and the population thins dramatically.
They could read their environment like a mosquito forecast. Experienced tribe members predicted bad mosquito nights by checking humidity, wind patterns, and animal behavior. They knew which spots would be crawling with insects and which would stay clear. Sleep timing became another weapon. Peak mosquito activity happens right after sunset and before dawn. Some tribes adjusted their schedules accordingly, staying up later when mosquitoes were most active, then sleeping deeper during quieter hours. Community arrangements multiplied protection. Groups could maintain larger smudge fires, share strategies, and watch for danger spots together. One person might spot a breeding area others missed, and everyone benefited. Here's what makes this story remarkable. Native Americans didn't just survive the mosquito problem, they solved it. For centuries, they slept peacefully in conditions that would hospitalize modern humans within days. They did it without a single piece of advanced technology, without chemical laboratories, without any of the tools we consider essential today. What they had instead was observation, experimentation, and intergenerational knowledge transfer. They watched which plants worked. They tested different mud consistencies. They noticed which animals ate mosquitoes and protected those species. They adjusted their behavior based on environmental conditions. They developed not just one solution, but an entire integrated system. Smoke for perimeter defense, mud for personal armor, fat for long-lasting protection, plants for targeted repellent, predators for population control, and strategic behavior for risk reduction. Each method had strengths and weaknesses. Each worked better in specific conditions. The genius was knowing which tool to use when, and how to combine them for maximum effect. Modern science is only now validating what these communities knew empirically, that certain plants do repel mosquitoes, that rancid fats do mask human scent, that ecosystem management does control pest populations better than extermination. We've spent the last century trying to dominate nature with chemicals and technology. Native Americans spent thousands of years learning to work with nature instead. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Their methods were probably more sustainable, definitely less toxic, and possibly more effective than what we've developed since. The next time you're slapping mosquitoes at a campsite, remember, entire civilizations figured this out. They slept peacefully for thousands of years, and they did it by paying attention to the world around them. Maybe that's the real lesson here. Sometimes the most advanced technology is just really, really good observation.